Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Travis and this is Bacon and Backpacking. So this is an episode I've been wanting to do for quite a long time. You know, it's the end of May, the sunshine is out, the weather is nice. That means that 2023 backpacking season is officially here. Me, I'm a 4-season backpacker, so I'm out, you know, in the winter as well too. But for a whole lot of people, you know, this is kind of the time of the year that brings in the backpacking season, right? With that being said, guys, I want to go ahead and go over some of the most common mistakes that I see inexperienced backpackers make. That way, you don't make these mistakes when you hit the trail. You have a lot better time on your trip. You know, a lot of these mistakes are things that I have seen people do over the years, but even more so, for those of you who are unaware, we just did our first annual, trip meetup for the channel. Me and then 13 of the subscribers, we actually went to North Fork Mountain in West Virginia for 4 days. So that was the first group trip we've ever done for the YouTube channel. By the way, if you're interested in doing something like that, go ahead, scroll down to the description box below. We actually have a Facebook group called Backpacking Ohio and Beyond. Go ahead and join that Facebook group, and that's where we organize like all of the trips that we'll be doing with the subscribers. And then go ahead and come on back to the video. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and start. None of these things are necessarily in like a particular order, okay? But let's go ahead and just for the sake of the video, let's go ahead and start with number 5. So mistake number 5 is definitely going to be, being under-prepared. When I say being under-prepared, I mean, kind of things that you don't think of as far as like, taking care of your body, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys a couple of examples. So if you have no way to, manage or treat blisters on the trail, that can really screw you over on a multi-day trip. If you're getting a hot spot or something like that, halfway through day 1, and you don't change your socks or put some moleskin or some duct tape or some KT tape on there or something like that, and that thing turns into a blister, come day 2 or 3, you're going to be hurting, and just mentally you're going to be checked out of the trip. So make sure you take care of your feet. So let's go ahead and talk about, the elements. We were backpacking up in the mountains, and, the weather was pretty good. I mean, it was like in the mid 60s. A lot of newer people, they forget when you're up on the top of a mountain, even over here in the eastern US where, the mountains are only 4,000 or 5,000 feet, when you're the highest thing in the surrounding area, there's not a whole lot of cover from the sun. There's a couple different things you can do. Obviously you can use sunscreen, but probably the best thing you can do is, have something like a sun hoodie that's going to go ahead and cover up all of those common, areas that get the most sun exposure, which would be like the back of your neck, your ears, stuff like that, your forearms, okay? But having, a good hat that's got good coverage, or like a bandana or something like that. So don't forget about what the sun's going to do to your skin, okay? I want you guys to think about, sweating. Okay, your back is going to be covered in sweat from like your pack, obviously like your armpits and kind of like your groin area, all those areas that kind of are prone to sweat buildup. You want to make sure that, whenever you stop hiking and you take that stuff off, that you have quick drying, synthetic clothing, okay? You don't want to have cotton. Cotton will just stay wet, all night. It may even make you cold if the temperature drops, too much. But even if it doesn't make you cold, you're still just going to feel like all like clammy and gross and stuff like that. Make sure you guys invest in the proper clothing, and you're wearing synthetics that are quick drying. Make sure you have a change of socks, but also make sure too that you have something like merino wool socks. I recommend the socks from Darn Tough. They have a lifetime guarantee on them. They are like 25 bucks a pair, but I promise you they're the best pair of socks you'll ever buy. Definitely worth it. But you want wool socks, not cotton. That way it kind of wicks away some of that moisture, and those socks will actually dry out. A couple other miscellaneous things you may not think of, your pack straps. You might want to wear like a tank top to get some sun or something like that, then put on long sleeves so you don't get burned. But make sure how your shirt is going to interact with those shoulder straps, right? If that tank is cut too narrow right here, and that shoulder strap is touching bare skin, you're going to have some serious chafing there. And not only is that a small little annoyance that can really just mentally screw with you, because all you're thinking about is, hey, this thing hurts, and you're constantly trying to adjust your pack and stuff like that. Not only does it do that, but if you're on a multi-day trip, backpacking is not the most sanitary thing. You don't want to end up rubbing an open wound and, you know, then having whatever bacteria that's on your skin, you know, end up getting into that wound or something and getting it infected. A big thing that a lot of people don't think about are belts and, you know, how your pants ride on your body. When you have a hip belt, you want to make sure that you don't have this big belt with like this big buckle or something, because then you have all this weird stuff that can kind of rub. Your hip belt buckle is rubbing on your belt buckle. Your pants aren't sitting where they're supposed to, you know, on your hips or on your waist. And then pretty soon you start getting some chafing there. So, you know, that's going to kind of lead me into like the next point. Point number 4 is going to be not testing your gear before the trip. I mean, there's a couple people that came out that weren't sure how to, you know, set up their tent, or how to operate some sort of, you know, piece of gear. Now, in the situation we were in, you know, with a group of more than a dozen people, with a lot of us being pretty experienced, not really, you know, a big deal. If you couldn't figure it out, we could, you know, help figure it out for you, right? Guys, before you go on a trip, especially if you go on a solo trip, or it's 2 or 3 of you, but you're all inexperienced backpackers, guys, set up your tent, set up your hammock, your tarp, whatever your shelter is, and set it up in your backyard. If you live in an apartment in the city or something like that, go to a metro park or go to some place that allows you to, you know, car camp is the best thing you can do, especially when it comes to that sleep system and that shelter system, guys. Learn how to put that thing up. You know, sometimes, you know, things don't go according to plan, and you might have to set up in a weird spot where you can't get a perfect pitch on your shelter, you know, or what happens a lot of times, you know, you can't quite get the mileage done in the time you thought you could get it done, so you end up setting up at dark, right? You know, if that's the first time that you've ever used that gear, now you're tired, you're probably a little bit dehydrated, you're hungry, you're setting up in the dark, guys. You don't want to be, you know, in that situation at all. Test your tent, test your hammock, you know, make sure you set all that stuff up and do it more than once. You know, don't get it when you buy it and then leave it in the closet for 5 months and then pull it out, put it in the pack, go drive to your destination, you know, get out and then try to set the thing up in the field, right? Like, make sure that you understand, you know, how your stuff works. Make sure you've hiked with your pack before. You know, if you're a brand new backpacker, you know, get that suspension set up at the right height, get your hip belt riding in the right spot, get your load lifters if you have them, get those things set. Make sure you know where you want to put everything in your pack. You know, have a system so you don't lose gear. You know, it's so easy for me to pack and unpack from trips because for the most part, my loadout has been exactly the same for going on probably 2 years now, you know, give or take an item or two. I never have to worry about not taking something on a trip or not packing something up in the morning when I'm breaking down camp, because like everything has a spot and I know exactly where it lives, and it's just like automated at this point, guys. So, you know, at the end of the day, these videos are like a good resource and give you, you know, good pointers and tips and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, nothing beats experience. So mistake number 3 you don't want to make. So we already talked about being underprepared. By the same token, make sure you're not over-prepared. It's very cliche to say this nowadays, but don't pack your fears, okay? You can probably leave the tomahawk at home, probably leave the crossbow at home. You know, you're not going to be doing any Bear Grylls stuff out there. You know, even if you get lost, make sure that you have, you know, your tiny little things, your signal mirror, some sort of like satellite communication, you know, paper map and compass, you know, stuff like that, right? And have like that gear and those skills. But guys, I've seen some crazy stuff, man. I mean, I've seen people take, you know, huge like 4-pound, you know, parkas when, you know, the low is 48. So, you know, don't pack your fears, you know, and this also goes into the previous point, right? If you test your gear, if you use your gear, you'll know how good that, you know, quilt, that 20-degree quilt keeps you warm at 30 degrees. Right? So you won't have to be saying in your mind, well, what if, you know, I get cold? You'll already know because you've tested that gear. So the last two kind of work together. But guys, don't what if yourself to death. Okay? You know, most backpackers, I'm going to tell you this in this video, but I promise you, if you're getting ready to do your first trip, this is what's going to happen anyway. There's going to be a whole lot of stuff you're like, I might need that. Or if this happens, maybe I should take that, okay? And what you'll find, and you kind of have to do this yourself, okay? It's just not going to work with me telling you. Go do about 2 or 3 trips. I promise you, you'll probably have 4 to 5 pounds of gear in your pack that didn't get used on all 3 of those trips, okay? So make sure you keep like a mental note of those things, right? If you haven't been using something every single trip, don't bring it, because you never are going to use it, okay? You know, that's the easiest way to lighten your pack. You know, sure, you can convert your dollars directly into a lighter pack, right? You can also do it for free by not taking all the stuff that you don't need, okay? Now, there's obviously some exceptions to this. You know, I hardly ever use my first aid kit, right? Keep that in there, okay? You know, I'll go through stretches where I don't use my rain gear for 5 or 6 months, right? Make sure you keep that. So your common sense stuff, right? Make sure you're bringing that stuff. But, you know, you'll find that if you never use the backpacking saw, or you never use the hatchet, or you never, you know, use that second warming layer, you know, when the temperature is around 45 degrees, right? Don't bring it, guys. But again, going back to this trip we just went on with a lot of folks who were kind of new to backpacking, when we got to the halfway point, it was to the point where people had brought so much extra stuff that they were putting it in like dry bags and stuff and stashing it behind trees at the halfway point so they could drive their car up and come get it, you know, when the trip finished. You know, some people dumped, you know, 4 or 5 pounds of gear that they had realized after one day they weren't going to be using. So again, guys, you know, it's easier for me to tell you this, but part of it is you just got to go out there and you have to get the experience, and you'll learn, you know, what not to take. But begin that thought process now. Okay, start beginning that thought process now. Sleep in your tent in your backyard. Go car camping, you know, someplace that's 20, 30 minutes from your house, okay? Test that gear out. Find out what you need and what you don't need, and don't be over-prepared in the same way that you don't want to be under-prepared. Dial in that setup, guys. Mistake number 2 that you don't want to make as a beginner backpacker, guys: don't show up to the trip not in shape. Guys, don't plan a 30-mile trip having never backpacked before and just think that everything's going to go great, okay? And this covers a lot of things. I'm not talking about just being in good, you know, cardiovascular shape and stuff like that, because that's important. You don't want to be sucking wind and you know, being tired the entire trip, right? So that's kind of the obvious thing. But a couple other things that might not be so obvious. You know, I lift weights a lot, right? And, you know, I do a lot of squatting, deadlifting, you know, a lot of lower body accessories. But you will find nothing is as specific to backpacking as backpacking, okay? You'll find that if you don't hike very much, especially not with weight, all the muscles below your knee, and I'm not even talking your calf, I'm talking like the little stabilizing muscles in your lower leg compartment, in, you know, in your feet, right? Those muscles will get tired, they will get sore, you know, they will hurt, you know, the whole trip. You might, you know, cramp up a little bit, stuff like that. You know, guys, if you have a backpacking trip coming up, regardless of what you do in the gym, and you should be in the gym because you should be lifting weights, because that's the best thing you can do for your health. So not what the video is about, but we are going to do a video on that in the future as well too. But you also need to be hiking, okay, to, you know, condition those stabilizing muscles for the tasks that, you know, they're going to need to take on. Also, you want to utilize smart training. I see, you know, on the forums all the time, people are like, I have shin splints, I have plantar fasciitis, my knees hurt, my ankles hurt. And that's because they wait until 3 weeks before their trip. They go out and do some 3, 4, 5 mile day hikes. They kind of build up to that or whatever. Then they just throw on a 40-pound pack and, you know, just go hammer it. And of course you get an overuse injury because your body was nowhere near used to that stress that you just placed on it. So of course it's going to throw a lot of things out of whack, right? So guys, here's your progression to get in shape. You know, do whatever normal gym routine you're doing 3, 4, 5 days a week. You don't need to be, you know, Mr. Olympia or the world's strongest man or anything like that. Get in there, do some free weight strength training, do some HIIT cardio, do some steady state cardio. So you should be doing that anyway, okay? Start throwing in a couple hikes a week, all right? Start with short mileage if you're not used to it. There's nothing wrong with going out for 2 miles. You know, bump that up to 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then once you increase your mileage a little bit, start adding some weight. You know, you were probably just carrying a day pack with some water and some emergency stuff in it, you know, very light 10-pound day pack. Bump it up to a 15, bump it up to a 20, And, you know, for training, I would tell you to probably bump it up to maybe even 5 pounds heavier than what your pack would be, you know, once you hit the trail for your actual backpacking trip, okay? So that's the best way that you can make sure you're in shape, you're not sucking wind, you're not miserable out on the trail. You want to be able to take in the trip and enjoy it, right? This is an experience. So make sure you're in good enough shape to do that, guys. And again, this also allows you to check out those clothing choices that you made to adjust that pack, right? All these things we were talking about, you know, test your gear. All this stuff, guys, ties in together. You're not going to just hit the ground running and everything's going to be great, right? Make sure you set yourselves up to be happy on your trip. I want that for you. All right, everybody, I know the suspense has been building, so here it is. The biggest mistake, hands down, that I see new backpackers make is having way too heavy of a pack, okay? Now, I do think that this is something that you watch YouTube videos and everybody tells you not to do it. You kind of got to learn it for yourself, right? But guys, one thing I would recommend, and I want to go ahead and put this in the description box as well too. There's a website called lighterpack.com, okay? It's basically like a website that allows you to lay out a spreadsheet of all your gear. It sounds stupid, but it was the best decision I ever made, okay? I know exactly how much everything in my pack weighs, so if you're a new backpacker, I'm not going to go out and tell you to spend as much money on gear as I have. I use it a ton. I'm out at least every month doing some sort of backpacking trip. If you're somebody getting into it, you might not even know if you want to keep backpacking or not. So I'm not going to tell you to go out and buy a $500 Dyneema tarp, right? That makes no sense. But what you can do is it'll allow you to keep your pack weight under control, okay? And it'll also allow you to see what the heaviest items are in your pack. So then if you do like backpacking, or you go on your first trip and you're like, man, my traps, my neck, my shoulders were killing me, my feet were killing me, my pack was too heavy, I had all these items I didn't use, right? You can start seeing on that list the items you should attack first, right? Like if you're budgeting things out and you're like, man, what would save me the most weight? Typically that's going to be your big three, right? That's going to be your sleep and shelter system, so your sleeping bags, your tents, your hammocks, your tarps, right? So it's going to be that stuff. It's going to be, you know, your backpack itself. You know, there's a guy that came on the trip, and him and I have been talking back and forth after the trip, because he was carrying like a 55-pound pack. The pack he was using itself, you know, military surplus pack, that pack was about 9.5 pounds empty. My base weight's about 9.5 pounds. All my gear, everything, you know, is about as much as his pack was empty with nothing in it. Get a little luggage scale or something like that off of Amazon for 20 bucks. You know, hang your stuff from that scale, weigh it, because I never trust, you know, manufacturers' specs, right? A lot of them embellish. You know, so do that, but also too, you know, a little food scale from Walmart, for any of you that like meal prep and stuff like that, same thing. Those things are 15, 20 bucks. So your small items, you can just sit on the food scale. And you can get a hanging luggage scale for things like, you know, hanging and weighing your hammock or your, you know, chair in the stuff sack, or, you know, even like your pack itself. So that's definitely the biggest mistake, guys. If you're not, especially if you're not conditioned for it, if you're out there carrying 40, 50-pound packs, you're not in shape, you haven't been backpacking, you're going to have a miserable time. And what I don't want to see happen is you go out that first trip, you feel horrible, you're dying, and you're like, dude, this is the worst idea I've ever had. Screw backpacking. I'm done. I'm selling all my stuff. I'm giving it away to Goodwill, right? And you kill your backpacking career before it even starts. So guys, make sure that you're being mindful. You know, pay attention to your pack weight, train with it, be in shape, be prepared, you know, to an adequate amount, not over prepared, not under prepared, guys. I hope this video helps you out. I hope it tells you some things that maybe you haven't thought about. At the end of the day, you know, they say you don't know what you don't know. This video is meant to lower the learning curve on backpacking a little bit, but guys, like I said, the best way to do it, get out there. Don't be scared. Do some short mileage overnighters. Find out what works and what doesn't. Dial in that pack before you do a big trip, guys. So as always, I hope the content helped you out. So go ahead and let me know down in the comments below if you thought that the video was good. Also, if you have any other tips to put in there, go ahead and drop those in the comments. Guys, if you like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more backpacking tips, tricks, hacks, and also, of course, trip videos of us actually out on trail backpacking, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. But until then, guys, I'll see you in the next one.